Hey there, I'm Vincent Weir. I'm a director of fintech programs at NFT Ventures, and I'm also a co-founder at Invenio Growth, which is a management consulting firm that helps corporations build billion-dollar fintech companies. So we're here to talk about M&A today, and I think the most natural starting point is ancient Rome. So here's a map of ancient Rome in 86 BCE, and if you know anything about Rome at this point, they have just fought what is called the Social War. And this is a war fought with the people that they have been conquering. So this, you can see here in Spain and really all over Southern Europe. And these people said, hey, you've been fighting us and you've been humiliating us and we feel like these second-class citizens and man, you guys beat us so bad, but we just want to be part of Rome. We want to join you guys. We want to merge with the Roman Empire. And Rome finally said, you know what? It's actually really hard fighting this brutal competition to the death every single day. Why don't we just let you guys become citizens in our empire and see how this dual citizenship thing works out? You're still part of Spain and you're part of Rome, a kind of merger, if you will. And you know what happened? That really, really worked. So this map right here, this represents almost 700 years of Roman conquest. And obviously it's hard to get an empire up and running and it starts to maybe gather a little bit of speed toward the end, but man, oh man, what an accelerant this concept of dual citizenship was. Here's what Rome looked like just 100 years later in 9 CE, thanks to the concept of dual citizenship. I come to another country and instead of saying like, let's fight to the death and grind each other down in a price war and make both of our lives miserable competing, why don't we just join forces? Why don't we merge? And of course, there's still a little bit of fighting here and there, but more or less, this was a huge accelerator to the empire. So just to quote the Encyclopedia Britannica on here, the offering of citizenship to the military and to the leaders of these principalities that Rome would come into, this dramatically accelerated the expansion of the empire. And I think it's a really cool illustration. And if you have any interest in understanding how Rome really pioneered and used this super weapon of growth, look into the work of historian Ralph W. Matheson, who has done a fantastic job cataloging it and talking about the Romans' pioneering use of this concept. So I don't think we need history to tell us that M&A is one of the most powerful growth weapons that a strategist can use. But I do think it kind of makes the point clear, right? A lot of us are competing out there, and it is a lot easier to just neutralize the competition and grow at the same time. And that, of course, is why global M&A transactions continue to rise over history. You may have heard that they're highly prone to failure. It's true, of course. Many deals fail. Nevertheless, we continue to see companies trying to use this superpower, this super weapon of growth. And the biggest firms are, of course, the most obvious candidates. So here you can see very well chronicled in light of today's antitrust environment that Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, all of these have acquired dozens and dozens of companies, dozens per year in certain cases, especially recently. And of course, that is because of this super weapon of growth that they know how to use. They have the competencies to use it, and they're using it to their advantage. The biggest, most valuable companies in the world are doing it, right? Within financial services, some of the biggest, most valuable companies are also following suit. So we see Jack Henry, which is a bank service provider. We see Swedbank here in the Nordics. We see Fiserv. We see Bambora. These companies they're built on buying other companies. That is how they grow their business. It's a very salient tactic within financial services, especially where there's long sales cycles, especially when there's complex regulations, when you're trying to cross-sell multiple entities and when you have the ability to cross-sell multiple products to an enterprise buyer, it makes a lot of sense, right? Now, the thing that struck me, and believe me, I've worked at big companies. I've worked at Fiserv. I worked at this super large company and I helped them acquire PC Lender in 2017 and Dovetail in 2018. But wow, the world was changing around us because the age of big fish eats small fish, as my collaborator Andrew Gilchrist likes to say, that age is ending. And there's a new age here when it comes to M&A. It's no longer big fish eats small fish. It is fast fish eats slow fish. And that is why there's a new actor on the space of M&A. And that new actor is startups. So first of all, I just want to share some research that my team conducted right before this. Earlier in the week, I sent out a little note to a couple of investors that I know. 13 of them responded from the pre-seed, seed, and Series A, B. And we asked them, what % of your portfolio companies discussed acquiring another startup in 2020? And the answer kind of astounded us. So literally 100% of the Series A and B investors said that their portfolio had discussed that in one way or another. And 83% of the Series A, of the seed and pre-seed companies also said that their portfolio had discussed. Okay, it's easy to talk about M&A though. What actually happened was, you can see here, pretty impressive results. So in 50% of the VCs that we talked to, at least one of the seed and pre-seed startups completed the purchase of another company. And similarly, 57% of the Series A and B bought someone else. So this is startups who are using, probably the investor's capital. They're probably burning cash themselves. And yet these folks are somehow managing to buy another firm, right? It doesn't make sense in the old paradigm where you need tons of capital, you need tons of resources, and you need like a dedicated M&A function. We're finding that startups are overcoming a lot of those obstacles and actually moving into the space. We're also seeing that a lot more startups are open to being acquired. This surprised me a little bit. I'm coming from a kind of a VC world where, yeah, you want your company to go be the winner take all in a market. And therefore, you would encourage that company to say, I don't want to sell, I don't want to sell, I don't want to sell. Well, I asked 26 CEOs, are you interested in selling? And guess what? Like the median score was 7.1. So at least the companies we're talking to, the fintech companies in the MasterCard Lighthouse program that we manage, they're open to it. And I found that to be an interesting trend as well. So both buy side and sell side, there are reasons. I think that there are actually 3 reasons why this trend is going to continue. And while startups will take their share of global M&A transactions from where it was just 5 years ago at 2.7% to over 5%. So this is roughly 100% increase in their market share of the global M&A market. I think there's 3 reasons why this is happening. And I want to go into those reasons. So number 1 is the investor incentives that are now present within startups. I don't think anyone needs to be told that there are more venture capitalists investing today than ever before. But just to make that point clear, there are over 1,000 VC firms raising capital last year. That's almost 10 times what it was a decade ago. And I mean, I don't know if there's more than 10 times the number of great companies, but still, we're in a very interesting place when it comes to investors who need to get returns on their capital, right? And as you can see from the chart to the right, the most common way that an investor gets capital, that they get an exit, right? That they find a way to get liquidity on this illiquid startup investment is through a trade sale or through M&A. And interestingly enough, if you think about startups buying other startups, and this is the very interesting and sort of nuanced chart here on the bottom left, there is an average step up multiple value increase for startups that do go on the acquisition trail. So if a company doesn't buy any companies and it raises its seed round, and then let's say it's seed round and then it goes into Series A, that company on average, if you're able to do both of those things, you get a 4x valuation increase. If you do both of those things and you buy one company, you get a 4.2% valuation multiple on average. And this is interesting research that we looked at with PitchBook again. So super interesting. Of course, this trend does actually fall down a little bit as you acquire more and more businesses. But the interesting thing seems to be that the super weapon of growth can help even a fast growing startup increase its valuation with investors. So investors like getting the exits on the sell side. They like they're like getting buying into more valuable companies on the buy side, and they tend to reward this in investment purchases. Super interesting trend that we noticed. And I think we're just going to continue to see these pressures rise from investors on both sides. They're going to want more exits. They're going to need to find better companies. And this is a great way to build better companies. And it's a great way to get an exit. Of course, there are nuances. Of course, there are problems that can happen. Many deals fail. But it's interesting to see that executed well, it can work. I want to move toward the end of this here by talking about the last 2 points. So basically, startups are getting better at growing their companies and getting better specifically through M&A. And the markets are rewarding smaller deal sizes, exactly the sorts of deals that a startup could effectively pull off. So my team looked at the backgrounds of the founders that we work with in the fintech industry. We looked at 150 different fintech founders, and we said, what % of you guys have backgrounds that are kind of compatible with an M&A transaction? Like, how many of you have done this before? We found that 53% of the founders we work with have been founders before, which means that they're likely to have at least experienced some pressure to buy or sell the company per our earlier analysis, and that 23% of these founders come from investment banking backgrounds. We think that one of the obstacles to startup M&A has been that the teams don't have the competence, and we're seeing that increasingly they do. And this final point, it's fairly nuanced. I would love to refer you to this research report produced in December of 2019, looking at stock market reaction as a kind of general proxy for which deals are better for companies. Is it smaller deals? Is it bigger deals? The answer is smaller deals are better than bigger deals. You can think about a smaller company integrating to a bigger company, sort of like a stem cell being put into a body, right? It's much easier to adapt. The people coming from smaller companies tend to be more flexible. The companies, when they're acquiring smaller companies, the ones that perform the best are the ones that are themselves the earliest in their life cycle, the earliest in their life stage, the most adaptable to growth. And I think both of those reasons are why startups make for great acquirers of other companies. I want to end today where we started, talking about ancient Rome, because you remember how Rome got started, of course, and how they really took off from our earlier presentation. But how did they fall? Well, they fell when several of the startups of their day, the kind of barbarian tribes from the Germanic-speaking countries, bonded together, formed some alliances, started sharing some incentives, and created a kind of super weapon of growth that could take on Rome. Well, today we're facing an environment where the empires of our times, the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, are themselves getting regulated into interesting places. They're no longer allowed to use the super weapon of M&A. And I wonder if this is a chance for startups who have not yet received that same admonition to use that super weapon to fight back.